Right now, 200,000 human lifetimes of attention are being consumed. Not today, not this year, every single day. And the man who built the mechanism that does it received $3,000 and a side project credit at a non-profit. His name is Arza Raskin. You have almost certainly never heard it, but you have felt his work every time your thumb keeps moving and the content never runs out. Arza Raskin grew up inside the mythology of computing. His father, Jeff Raskin, was the Apple engineer who conceived the Macintosh project, not Steve Jobs. Jeff Raskin, the man who believed computers should feel like tools that disappear, that technology should serve the human nervous system rather than hijack it. Jeff Raskin spent his career trying to make machines gentler. He wrote papers about cognitive friction. He cared, professionally and philosophically, about the cost of demanding human attention. Arza inherited that vocabulary. He grew up around that thinking the way other kids grow up around a family trade. By his 20s, he was working in interface design, which is the discipline concerned with the exact moment a human being touches a machine, what happens there, what it costs, what it rewards. This is not abstract work. Interface designers decide what your eyes go to first, how long your fingers stay on a screen, what feeling you carry away when you put the phone down. They are, in effect, behavioral architects. Most of them are not famous. One of them should be. In 2006, Arza Raskin was working at the Humanized Software Company, doing contract work with the Mozilla Foundation, the nonprofit behind the Firefox browser. Mozilla was not Google. There was no war chest, no fleet of product teams. It was the kind of place where one person with a good idea and a few hours could ship something that millions of people would touch. Raskin was 22 years old. The problem he was trying to solve was pedestrian, almost embarrassingly so. Pagination, the click. That moment on a web page when you reach the bottom of a list, search results, an article, a feed, and you have to press a button that says next page or load more. Raskin found it annoying. Users found it annoying. There was friction there, a small interruption that broke the experience of browsing. His solution was elegant in the way that most world-altering ideas are elegant. Remove the button. When a user approaches the bottom of the page, detect their scroll position and automatically load more content behind them. No click required. The page grows. The content continues. The experience is unbroken. He coded it in a weekend, maybe less. Later, he would describe it as something he built in a few hours. He wrote a blog post explaining how it worked and released it into the commons. There was no patent filing, no lawyer, no business development meeting. He published it openly because that was the culture he was working in. Share the idea, let the web get better, move on. Mozilla's mission was an open internet. The gesture was in the spirit of the organization. The decision would cost him nothing he could count at the time. Within months, developers across the industry had read the post and understood what it made possible. Within 2 years, Twitter had implemented it. Facebook followed. Tumblr, Reddit, Pinterest, Instagram, each one adopted the infinite scroll as a core interface feature. By 2012, it was simply the way the internet worked. By the time TikTok launched in 2016, it had been refined into something so seamless, so perfectly frictionless, that the content became less like a list you were browsing and more like a current you were caught in. This is the part that requires some precision, because it's where the story becomes something different from a standard tale of stolen credit. Raskin was not sued. He was not pushed out of a company. There was no dramatic boardroom moment, no handshake that turned into a knife. What happened to him is something more diffuse and in some ways more disturbing. He was simply not there when his idea became a product. He had placed it in the world without a mechanism to stay connected to it. The companies that adopted Infinite Scroll did not need his permission, did not owe him a license fee, did not need to mention his name in a press release. He had given it away, and the giving was clean and legal and total. The $3,000 he received was his Mozilla contract payment for the period in which he built the feature. That is not a royalty. That is not a licensing fee. That is what he was paid to show up. The feature itself, the specific interface pattern that would go on to restructure human attention at a scale no single technology had ever achieved before, was compensated at zero. Now hold that number against the other number. Instagram was acquired by Facebook in 2012 for $1 billion. TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, was valued at over $300 billion at its peak. Facebook's market capitalization crossed $1 trillion. Twitter, before its acquisition by Elon Musk, was worth tens of billions. None of these companies built their engagement architectures alone, but all of them were built in part on the premise that content should never end, that the cost of stopping should always be higher than the cost of continuing, that the finger should always have somewhere to go. That premise has a specific first expression. It has a name attached to it. It has a blog post from 2006 written by a 22-year-old in Portland. The compensation that name received, $3,000, and the satisfaction of a good idea. But here is where Asa Raskin's story diverges from every other story in this genre. Most inventors who were robbed spend their lives angry at the people who took what was theirs. They file suits, they write memoirs, they build timelines of injustice and defend them in interviews. Raskin did something that is rarer and harder to watch. He turned the anger inward toward the thing itself. In 2018, he gave a talk that spread across the internet with uncomfortable speed. He said out loud on camera that he was sorry he built it, not sorry it was taken, sorry it exists. He had done the math, the daily calculation of human attention lost, the lifetimes consumed, and arrived at a figure that he felt obligated to repeat: 200,000 human lifetimes every day spent scrolling through content that was never supposed to be endless. He clarified what he meant by lifetime, not a metaphor, an actual statistical calculation based on reported daily screen time and global user counts. If you aggregate the hours humans spend each day in the scroll he invented and convert those hours into complete human lives from birth to death, you get 200,000 every day. That number does not decrease as smartphones spread to new populations. It grows. Raskin co-founded the Center for Humane Technology with Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist who had become similarly troubled by what persuasive technology was doing to the people it claimed to serve. The organization does not sue anyone. It does not seek damages. It advocates for design standards that would reduce the extractive quality of digital products, features that, by Raskin's own admission, he helped to pioneer. He is campaigning against his own creation. He is lobbying governments to regulate what he built. He gives talks in which he describes himself, without drama, as someone who caused harm. This is not performative guilt. The man grew up with a father who wrote academic papers about the ethical obligations of interface designers. He knows the language of cognitive cost. When he says his invention was designed without thinking about what it would do at scale, he means it precisely. He wasn't being careless. He was solving a small problem on a contract job. He just happened to be solving it at the exact historical moment when mobile devices were about to put screens in every human pocket on Earth, and when the entire logic of the attention economy was being assembled around him, piece, by people with more money and more ambition, and it should be said, more lawyers. The people who took his idea were not villains in any cinematic sense. They were product managers and engineers at fast-growing companies who read a blog post and recognized a solution to a problem they also had. No law was broken. No trust was violated in any formal way. The system worked exactly as it was designed to work. Ideas flow freely on the internet. Companies iterate on them. The companies that move fastest and have the most capital capture the most value. The inventor gets a byline in a history that almost no one reads. What was stolen from Asa Raskin was not only money, though it was also money. What was stolen was agency. The ability to decide what his idea would become, how it would be implemented, what guardrails it would carry, whether it would ever be turned off. When you patent an invention, you retain a form of control. You can license it with conditions. You can refuse to license it to certain buyers. You can, in theory, build a fence around your idea and decide who gets to use it and for what purpose. Raskin had no fence. He had posted the idea on a blog, freely, in good faith, in the spirit of an internet that was supposed to be a commons. The internet turned out to be a commons in the sense that everyone could take from it. The part where the people who took the most gave something back, that part didn't scale. What Raskin is trying to do now is more difficult than getting rich would have been. He is trying to change the industry that absorbed his work. He testifies before legislatures. He talks to journalists. He explains, in patient technical detail, why the features that make apps feel effortless are actually the features that are most dangerous, because friction is not always the enemy. Sometimes friction is the moment that lets you decide whether to keep going. Remove enough friction and the decision disappears. The scroll just continues, the content just arrives, and somewhere in that seamlessness, hours pass that you did not choose to give. He is not always heard. The companies that built empires on seamlessness have compliance teams and lobbyists and market research showing that users prefer the frictionless experience. What users prefer and what is good for users are, in the attention economy, almost definitionally different things. And Asa Raskin knows this better than most, because he was the person who found the seam and removed it. Jeff Raskin, his father, died in 2005, 1 year before his son built Infinite Scroll. Jeff spent his last years still writing about interface design, still insisting that the measure of a good tool was whether it left its user more capable and more free. He never saw what happened to his son's idea. He never saw the scale. But the irony is not subtle. The man who devoted his intellectual life to reducing cognitive burden fathered the man who, without fully understanding it at the time, created one of the largest cognitive burdens in human history. Asa Raskin did not set out to cause harm. That is the fact that makes this story harder to resolve than most. There is no clear villain. There is a system that rewards speed and scale while leaving the originating insight and the person who had it behind. There is a culture of open sharing that is genuinely valuable and also structurally vulnerable to exploitation by entities with the resources to convert ideas into products faster than their inventors can react. There is a 22-year-old with a brilliant, dangerous solution to a problem he understood completely, working in a context that gave him no way to understand what he was about to unleash. And there is the number, 200,000 human lifetimes, every day, growing. The metric that haunts Raskin is not the money he didn't receive. He talks about the money only in the context of what it reveals, that a $3,000 payment and a blog post credit is all the industry felt it owed the person who handed them one of their most powerful behavioral tools. The metric that actually keeps him awake is the attention, the aggregate human time, the scale of the thing. He built a mechanism and then watched it be installed in every mind-altering device on Earth, and he cannot uninstall it, and he cannot be compensated for it, and he cannot stop it by any means currently available to him. He is trying anyway. That might be the most important part of the story, not the injustice of the $3,000, though it is unjust, not the billions that accrued to others from his unprotected idea, though the contrast is stark. The most important part is that the person who built the thing that is eating human attention at planetary scale is the person most loudly insisting that something has to change. He is not asking for credit. He is not asking for money. He is asking for time, human time, the exact resource his invention most efficiently consumes, to be treated as something worth protecting. His father would have agreed. The question Raskin's story leaves open is not whether Infinite Scroll was stolen. It was taken, legally, by people with more leverage, and that is its own kind of theft. The question is what we do with systems that make this kind of taking not just possible, but inevitable, that reward the extractor over the creator, the product over the idea, the company over the person who had the thought on a Saturday afternoon and posted it on a blog, because that's what you did when you believed the internet was built on generosity. That question doesn't have an answer yet. Asa Raskin is still working on it.